NPK, a word people who do a bit of gardening, farmers, they know very well. N, nitrogen, P, phosphorus, and K, potassium. Don't ask me, it's a Neo-Latin. So that's why it's a K. Well, hello.
Oh, मेरे भाई.
Welcome to my channel, my friend Bob. Let's talk about fertilizers today. And the best thing we have today is we have our friend Bob today. And he'll explain to us fertilizer, organic, non-organic, everything. So let's start.
Hey, my friend, it's good to be back. We're in the early part, in the first couple days of August, and maybe the gardens are starting to take a little bit of a beating, so it's probably a good idea to give them a little feeding.
Bob, by the time you get in July is still getting from that temperature one to the other. By the time you're in August, it starts getting too warm suddenly, and then too much water also.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rule about fertilizing first?
Well, this year, you've been through a lot. The gardens, we've been through wet weather, where the fertilizer gets washed out. We've been through dry weather, where you've been watering. So again, the fertilizer might need to be replenished a little bit. They're also, the plants are stressed. They're facing insect, disease, stuff like that. So a little shot in the arm could do them a lot of good.
It worries me personally, to start putting fertilizer this late in summer. That's my own habit.
Definitely. Moderation.
Help me understand.
It would have to be moderation. Again, we prefer to use an organic, but since you get into, you're probably halfway through the season now, you might want something that works a little bit quicker. So an organic may take a little bit more time.
Okay, so since you came to the subject, organic versus inorganic, what I understand is there's a green revolution which happened after the Second World War, because we figured out how to build a fertilizer inorganically, which was urea, the first one. And they use the word green revolution, even though it's not the right word, because we actually destroyed our agriculture. That's my thought. I know you believe differently. Why should I not use organic right now? And what's the difference? Help me understand.
The organics are usually very slow. Now, an organic fertilizer could be anything from garden tone or something like that that's been processed, or it could be even something like fish. You did an excellent video a few weeks back probably now, on Guy and his garden, and he mentioned using fish. Usually you do it early in the season. Your organics, again, they take a while to go to work. So, time is of the essence right now. If you were to put your fish or whatever in the soil, it'd be great for next year. But again, you need something to work a little bit quicker.
So sell me the idea of why inorganic right now. Again,
you want something that gets to that plant and works soon. You don't want it working you do want it working in September, but you want some of it to kick in now. You don't want to use a real organic that's going to be working next spring.
Because when we talk about organic, what I think most people do not realize, compost is an organic solution. So is fish. So is blood.
Sure.
So is, like, there's so many manure and everything.
Manure, definitely.
And you have to be careful with those also. Like, as much as I say you should use organic, you have to be careful.
Very.
You use manure, and it's not ready. It'll destroy everything around you.
If you use something like chicken manure, very hot, very high in urea, which is part of nitrogen.
Now, we use that word. My dad used to use hot. Let's explain what hot means.
Hot is you could burn the plants, physically burn them, because of the high, the heat that's generated as that chicken manure breaks down. Horse manure is not so bad. Usually there's a lot more straw mixed in. We used to use out in the field to cover our perennials, horse manure. We'd go up to the stables, get a truckload and spread it out. And again, you were protecting them. They get heat from the manure on top of them, and in the spring, they would just till in, and there's your organic fertilizer.
So when the word hot happens, because people will say, "Oh, it feels hot," how everybody
it doesn't feel hot as much as it can. It's the heat is from the damage.
Start with NPK.
NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Keep in mind, the easiest way, simplest way to keep it in mind is up, down, and all around. Nitrogen is more for your top growth. That's why a good lawn fertilizer is 10-6-4. Your phosphorus is more over fruit development. So we'd use for the garden, I would tend to use 5-10-5. Maybe with corn, you would use a 10-6-4 or a 10-10-10, something higher.
So numbers will be confusing, Bob, everybody, because now it's becoming mathematics. And most people do not want to learn mathematics.
For most of your gardening, again, keep it simple, you'd want to go with something that has a ratio of 1-to-1, I think.
Okay.
5-10-5, something like that.
So 1-to-1 is for your vegetables and your flowers?
For the most part. Again, for something like corn, you could go a little higher in nitrogen. Your lawn is always going to be a high nitrogen, unless you're doing like a seeding, where again, you want to develop the root system. So your phosphorus will develop a root system.
So I did ask you this question the other day, and this is, I sent him a text message, and Bob has an answer. I have greens inside my house, and my thought was, give them higher nitrogen. And you said no. Help us understand.
Again, I like more of a balanced fertilizer. You don't maybe need as much green growth inside. You want the plants to look good, obviously, but overall health, you probably want to use a more balanced fertilizer.
Now, when you come with balance, you bringing the first two numbers lower and the middle number higher, NPK.
Okay.
Why?
For that, then you want root development and you want fruit development. And that's what your P does. You know, that's the most important. Again, your phosphorus or your K is for overall disease resistance, overall growth. You know.
Since you use that word, and I wasn't even thinking, does a fertilizer help in diseases?
Sure.
How?
It's like the human body. The healthier you are, the better well-fed you are.
See?
You know, the better you can fight off insects and disease.
This is what we learned from Bob. Something I never knew. And I actually learned just now. So I do understand fertilizers are used, and there are many people, and I'm a big believer to use compost. And others will say compost is a kind of fertilizer.
Definitely. Compost has some nutrient, but you got to be a little bit careful in its use too. I have two old friends who had gotten this great idea. They went to the local conservation center, got the guys to bring them a truckload of mulch, tilled it in the winter, thinking it would be the best thing for their garden. Come next year, they plant it, but come mid-season, nothing's growing. Everything's stunted. The weather had been decent, watering was decent, but nothing was growing. And it turns out that with all the compost in the soil, the microbial action was robbing all that soil of nitrogen and other nutrients. And all they had to do, they got a little, and they used an inorganic, because again, they wanted it to work as quickly as possible, fertilizer in there, and the garden kicked into the shape. And one other thing while I'm thinking about it, is you got to realize that fertilizer isn't just NPK. There are many micronutrients you could use. Sometimes plants will show a deficiency in magnesium. There's all sorts of different micronutrients that can and do help with plants.
So this is where the gypsum and the lime and all those things come into play?
They will help with uptake of that fertilizer, but they are not nutrients.
Okay.
The gypsum, again, helps your soil porosity. It will help that fertilizer get down into the ground, and the roots there to take it up. Lime, your plants grow better at certain pHs, and that'll help maintain your proper pH level.
Surely we're not discussing pH, but since you brought it up, and I'll ask you that question, why is that important? Because I've never looked at it. I've got 2 meters that I can check. I've never done in my life.
The pH, if you get, you can get a, I'm sure on the internet you can find, there's a list of plants, and it'll tell the nutrient, no, I'm sorry, the pH requirements. And, you know, you'd have to look, you want your garden soil, if you're growing tomatoes, you want that soil to be in that zone for the the pH for the tomatoes.
Because if I go back in the day, the way I'm thinking, my grandfather was a farmer. Anybody who does not know, I just do it for the looks, but my grandfather was a real farmer. Actually, that's how he raised my father and all his sons and daughters. I don't think they used to do that, because back in the day, they'll use probably cow manure and just go with it. We are making it far too scientific. Why?
Well, now things have changed a bit. I think for the most part, soils around here are going to tend to be slightly acidic, and that's usually where you want your soil to be. So unless you really tested, and you know, you can get a test at the cooperative extension. It used to be around 12, 15 bucks. I don't know what it is now, but that will give you your pH and tell you other nutrients that you may need to supplement your soil.
Because one other thing which because I tend to learn and watch, and there are methods where the Amish have used, and they do not use any meters, but they have figured out how to do it. The same thing what you're talking about.
Okay.
So probably back in the day, there were methods that they did not use something, and
they probably had a feeling by eye or touch, you know, and tell how their soil was doing.
I have like watching a lot of people, they tend to use the greens, whatever they cut from the plants, back into the soil, just leave it on top. Then there are many people who also use grass on top, and I do think that grass is a bad idea. What's your thought behind it?
I like the idea of grass. One big caveat is you don't want to be putting grass on there where you've used a weed killer or a weed control, okay? But again, the problem with grass, if you put grass in a bucket and keep it for a couple weeks, you can see the heat it generates. So you really want the grass breaking down. Find an area in the back, make a compost pile, throw your grass on there. To me, people go out and they buy fertilizer and they put it on their lawn. Then they're cutting it and they're taking the clippings away. You're taking the nutrient away.
If that's the question, like when my lawn is mowed, should I put them wherever my plants are growing or not?
You could. I let mine just drop back into the lawn. Figure it'll fall, on the lawn. I don't collect my clippings.
Because even with grass clippings, eventually the smell is almost like a human pee by the time...
Or rotting fish or something like that. It definitely...
Right. So it's just in me, I just think that that's not a good idea. But I've seen people who do that.
Well, again, if we jump back to composting, you want that mix. If you take your grass clippings and you're mixing it with leaves, branches, things like that, you want to get air in there. And that'll make it more usable as a nutrient source.
So the whole idea is just to be able to
turning
move it
it,
around.
airing it, mixing it. Variety is the spice of life. You just want all sorts of good stuff in there.
Okay, so
using grass will generate the heat. And sometimes you can almost generate a fire, using that.
Actually, last year, our own conservatory over here, that caught fire because there was so
rotting,
much
rotting
was happening. And it's funny that can happen. And it was all whatever people brought from the house, the greens and stuff, it eventually caught fire.
Right.
It can happen. So you have to be careful. You have to think through what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Before I ask you the last question, because last question is even though you have already told us what's the right fertilizer for everything, because there's no one solution.
No. For corn's a grass, you're going to want to use something with more top growth.
But my question would be, again, because between, like in our years that we have known each other, you and I go back and forth about organic versus organic. I would like you to explain a bit
There's a place for everything. With the organics, again, you want that slow grow use. Put it in early in the season before you plant. Put it in the year before. You could use it whenever. You can use an organic now. It's not a problem. It's just it won't be available to the plants probably. And inorganic, again, here we are early August. You don't want something that's going to go to work in October, November. You want something that kicks in now. So you want to use an inorganic, use it in moderation. You never get it up against the plant. You let it work down into you. You don't work it in the soil. I'd like to see you just let it work in on itself.
So what would be not a brand, because we're not trying to promote anybody.
Right.
And in terms of organic, you go to for flowers and vegetables for a home gardener. There is one solution or no?
No, there should be many different ones that you could use. But as long as it's listed for gardens, again, try to keep in mind you want something with that 1-2-1 balance in the numbers that are always listed on the bag. You'll see them on the bag. And then if you get into the fine print, it should list nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then it'll list any micronutrients under that if needed. Again, they'll never hurt. They can only help.
So remember one thing, when Bob uses a 1-2-1, that's a mathematical number. So a 5-10-5 is a 1-2-1 also. It's just that the numbers are higher. But remember that 1-2-1 does not mean the same exact number. So you can find, because most of the, even the organic or inorganic ones, they come in 5-10-5 or...
Right. You could get 10-6-4,
right,
which is good for lawn or garden. That would be a 2-1-1, roughly. Your lawn fertilizers usually are, say, 25%, maybe 3-3, 25%, 4-4. So again, big difference in nitrogen.
Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Again, we
So
had
it's enjoyable.
our friend Bob. A lot of knowledge, a lot of information. I would want you to watch this video a few times to absorb everything what Bob has explained. This is how Bob has been somebody who has taught me so much. Even though whatever he said today, and we've been friends for a long time, I did not know some of these things. Like and subscribe, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, all.